Good afternoon. Thanks for coming, everyone. We have about, I don't have a final count, but last time I checked, there were over 150 people registered for ISSST 2013. I know that I personally asked dozens of the people in the room here today to come, because many of you are my friends, and I haven't, got to see you all yet. I'm sorry for that, because I want to renew all of those acquaintances, and I'm very glad you're here. This event is going to be a success financially, which was really important to us. I think it's going to be a success intellectually, but you'll be the best judge of that. So these opening remarks, I haven't even introduced myself. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Tom Seeger. My job in these opening remarks is to welcome you to our symposium. With 150 of you, it's too much of a job for just me, so I want to ask you to do something. This requires you to stand up. Now what I want you to do is find someone that you haven't seen in a year or you don't know at all, and this might require you to turn around. I want you to introduce yourself to them, and I want you to welcome them to this symposium, because that's the only way we're going to get to everybody. All right, that's enough. You crazy rowdy people. Poster session's not till 5 hours. That was outstanding. I can see this is a great crowd. There is a theme that emerged as we put together our plenary speakers and our program this year. I realized that one of the things that attracted us to each of these speakers is this idea of innovation. We've asked 3 speakers, Ed Sawicki, Eric Beckman, and Paul Anastas, to come and speak in these plenary sessions. Each one of these people we've asked to think about this theme of innovation. And that's a theme that's appropriate for 2013 because the symposium itself is changing things. We are not the only organization to concern ourselves with sustainability. I want to show you a couple more. I'll plug this one. This is the International Congress of Sustainability Scientists and Engineers. It's going to be in Cincinnati. It's going to be at this very hotel. We couldn't co-locate them in time, but we co-located them in space, and this makes it easier for the people at the EPA to participate in both conferences. But ISSST is not to be confused with ICOSH, which is another group of people concerned about sustainability, science, and a system. You say, well, what the heck is the difference between the International Symposium on Sustainable Systems and Technologies, the International Congress on Sustainability, Science, and Engineering, and the International Congress on Sustainability Sciences? Trust me, there are some differences, but they're not readily apparent just by looking at the title. The third conference here is predominantly social scientists, taking a social science approach. They are strongly international. They've conferred in Rome and in Tokyo and in Tempe, where I work at Arizona State University. They've created a new international society for sustainability science, which I think is, kind of interesting. One of the differences, although it's superficial, is that we are in our 20th year. I say it's superficial because we look nothing like the group that started this train 20 years ago. I wasn't there. I don't know if there are people in the room who were there, but they can spin some tales for me at the poster session. So I started thinking, though, about what are some of the other differences. This is now the IEEE offering. I mentioned that we're no longer part of IEEE. This is what IEEE is doing. It's another conference that has some superficial similarity to what we're doing. This is a crowded but growing space of people who are concerned about sustainability. So this is, Technologies for Sustainability. It will be in August, and it will be in Oregon. And I'm not personally acquainted with dozens of people who will be attending this one. So what's different about us? One of the things that I want to do with this group is change the way peer review works. Now, if you're in the university, it's very important to publish your peer-reviewed journal articles, and you may be worried about impact factors and all that kind of thing. We have an editors round table. All of these are editors-in-chiefs of journals that are new and relevant to sustainability. And so a lot of these issues about peer review and publication will come up during the editors round table. I don't want to rehash them entirely, but the technologies available to peer review are changing rapidly. The journals and the practices are not. here's something that we're doing. You may remember, although I'm certain that most of you don't, one of our more popular blog posts was on how the symposium itself, the session, should be part of the peer review. So we've set up our website to help facilitate this new model of peer review. That's the old model, and it's illegible. I owe this slide to Scott Unger, who's a graduate student at ASU. If you can't read it, then I'm going to blame it on Scott. But he's in the front row, so it looks pretty good. Right now, peer review is organized around what used to be a 15-cent stamp, but it's now 46 or whatever you pay for your forever stamps. The co-authors all coordinate with the corresponding author. The corresponding author goes through some sort of, usually now web-based tool. I put SoftCon up there because we're familiar with that. That corresponds with the editor, and the editor corresponds with the reviewers. This minimizes the number of transactions and thereby the transaction costs, but it creates a bottleneck at the editor and the corresponding authors. Now, if you're an associate editor, you know exactly what this bottleneck looks like. I'm doing a special issue in environmental systems and decisions. I just sent it to the proofs, yesterday. The bottleneck is my inbox in this sort of arrangement. Because when I get 17 emails, none of which I can answer promptly, our time to review goes way too long. Scott's idea about how to blow that old model up and make it new, make it so there's now a lot more transactions. The co-authors are directly connected with readers. The editors don't correspond. I mean, they still correspond with the corresponding author, but the editors are also in touch with readers and co-authors in a whole ecosystem of knowledge around the paper. We're using WordPress to facilitate that, but we're not just using WordPress. You will be able to tweet. You will be able to meet. You will be able to offer authors feedback here in this symposium setting as part of the peer review process. Part of that is we created a form. Now, ordinarily I'm like death to forms, but other people use forms, and I think this does help structure feedback that the presenters can get from their audience. We will print these forms, we will have them in the parallel sessions, and the session chairs, this is what I'm asking you to do, meet with your speakers, ask if your speakers are doing a paper, and ask if they would like this type of feedback. Make these forms available and let the audience know that the speakers are interested in this type of feedback. These forms will be delivered directly to the speakers. The speakers can use this feedback or they can discard this feedback. But I want to improve the bandwidth for communication so that we get a lot more feedback than we used to. We don't have to do this exclusively in person or exclusively on paper. We've set up the conference website. This is our homepage. You go to the ISSST proceedings, and it will take you to a table of contents. If I scroll down and I decide, well, I have a lot of things to say to Eric Williams, I'm sure. When I read this paper, Eric will probably know it's me. None of these comments are anonymous, but they might be helpful. This is password protected so that Google will not search bot your papers. It won't cache your papers, but everyone in the conference will be able to get through and see your papers. It's organized by session and table of contents. We get to Eric's paper, which appears in a preview window. Below this paper is an area where you can comment. What I inadvertently skipped was that the paper appears in its own window. It's a PDF copy. You can preview and comment at the same time. You can do some other social media things that you might be familiar with. You can like the paper. You can Facebook the paper. You can tweet about the paper. So we're trying to incorporate social media and what my kids call IRL into the peer review IRL is in real life. Into the peer review process. Okay, so what else is different about ISSST? Never mind the papers. I'm getting the most positive feedback about the menus. We're changing the menus at the symposium. This is Amy Landis's idea, and I can say it was Amy Landis's idea because so many people so far have decided that they like it. The default menu is vegetarian, and it's not spaghetti vegetarian. Beth Schaefer of Current Events Company, raise your hand up there, Beth. But this is Beth Schaefer who's helping us coordinate the conference. She called up the Marriott and said, we want a couple of things from you. One of the things that we want is we want to make sure there is no bottled water anywhere near our participants. They can drink the tap water from the pitchers. I see somebody's enjoying that fine Cincinnati Public Works water right now. The other thing that we want is we want the default menu. This is Thursday's lunch menu, and by the way, it looks delicious. We want it to be vegetarian. They sent back a bunch of pasta dishes, and Beth said, that's not good enough for our crowd. They don't have these vegetarian dishes on the menu. Beth sent them a menu of her favorite vegan restaurant in San Francisco, and she said, these are the kinds of things that you should be making for us. She had an extensive conversation with the chef, and the chef was like, hey, that's a good idea. Then I said, but Beth, we must, my son, he's 17, he lives on nothing but hamburgers. We must, accommodate there must be an opt-out, right? If you want meat, you can have meat, and we will accommodate you. So far, 3 people are going to eat chicken. I think that's great. Eat, what you like. But what we discovered is that this is straight out of the Nudge book. People will just sort of go along with what the default is. And what we have for a default at this conference is delicious. So enjoy Thursday. That's to Beth's credit. So what else is different about ISSST? We're attempting to change the technologies. We all come together in Cincinnati, and we meet, and this is terrific. We get a sense of who one another are when we see each other and we shake hands and we engage in conversation. But this is not good enough. Next year, we're not going to be in Cincinnati, and I know there's going to be several people from the EPA that we want to involve who will not be allowed to travel. How can we bring them into our proceedings? And the answer is to master distance technologies like video and SIVO. These are not Skype. Skype is free, and it's ubiquitous, and it sucks. What we're doing here is looking at more advanced tools for video conferencing that, I'm sorry, I forgot I was in the Midwest. Skype is inadequate to our needs. So we're looking at these other proprietary tools. We're going to test both of them at the conference to see if we can master them to the extent where we can bring people in via distance only. There is an eco-efficiency component to this. We know it's not as good as in real life, but it would allow people who are restricted to travel or who don't want to travel to still participate in aspects of the conference that I hope are interesting to them. If you participate in a session, Kristen Parrish, unbeknownst to her, is chairing it. If you participate in Kristen's session on buildings, it's on Friday, Mitch Nudelman will be SIVOing in from France to give his presentation. And I would be delighted to receive your feedback about how well you think these video tools are working out for us. So we're changing these things. And to my knowledge, the other conferences that are concerned about some of the same intellectual ideas that we have, that have some different perspectives, are still doing it in what I would call a traditional way. I don't think we're done adapting or evolving. I hope we're not done adapting and evolving. And if you want to join us as a leader of this sort of crazy experimental effort, we're having a breakfast. It's in the program. It's open to everyone. And I think it's Friday morning. Get up early. Hey, I'm on Pacific Daylight Time right now, so I don't want to hear it unless you're from Japan. Any excuses about how breakfast is too early. Get yourself in and join this conversation about where we are going. A couple of things have happened since we convened in Boston. Where I want to go, I've been convinced by these things, where I want to go is away from a Gutenberg technology-based approach to science and towards a 21st century approach to science. I did a little reading up on the Royal Society and some of the early scientific societies, and they are organized around the periodical, around the journal, around the printing press. They remain organized this way over 500 years later. They're not able to incorporate the information communication technology tools that are available to us now, partly out of habit and partly because us tenured-old fogies get stuck in our ways and it's good enough for us and we don't want to change. I do not believe that's good enough for the graduate students in our audience who can expect, I think if they're fortunate, to have careers that will span both this Gutenberg-based model and a 21st century digital technologies model. So what would a scientific society look like if it was organized around 21st century technologies instead of around 15th century technologies? And that's hard to say. I think it would not look like a society. I think we need a new word to describe what this new approach to sharing and creating knowledge is going to be. So I sat in the office of the Arizona Corporation Commission, where you file your paperwork to start a new corporation. And I had my Wi-Fi and my paperwork, and I went through all the good names. Believe me, if you have a name that you think is good, better than what I've come up with, it's taken. I created a new corporation. This is a nonprofit corporation organized in the state of Arizona. It's called the Sustainability Cognoscenti Network, because a 21st century model for science will not be a society. It will be a network. And you can call it a social network, but I'm calling it a science network. The question is, what does this word cognoscente mean? Now, if you see a new word and you don't know what it means, one of the best sources of information is Urban Dictionary, which I think is authored by a bunch of 14-year-olds because it's scatological and profane, but it tells you what the heck they're talking about, and I have teenage kids. So sure enough, this cognoscenti word, I didn't invent that word. It is a word, but people have created new words out of it. One of them is coffeescente. And this is the idea of someone who's a coffee snob, and I know that there are some people who fit this description in our audience, so I'm using this as an example of how we make up new words that mean things to us, and we get to define what they are. It comes from this sense of cognoscente, someone who's cognitively qualified as an expert. But it means more than just this sort of source of expertise. Here I've looked up a real definition, and it says people with informed appreciation of a particular field. They're connoisseurs in this field. You are connoisseurs of sustainability. But cognoscente also, according to the interweb, means something in Italian. It means acquaintance. And I like this double meaning. You are now acquainted with people who are expert in sustainability. You're not BFF necessarily. We got a couple more days for the conference, and we'll see how you feel after the poster session. But you're now acquainted with people associated in this network who have something in common and have expertise to bring and hopefully knowledge to share.